Derek Companies. Welcome back to Good Stories. This is our opportunity where we basically just film for a few minutes and we just tell good stories that have either happened recently or new stories that are kind of coming to light from across our world for places where people are doing good things and caring for one another. And just to introduce myself, if you don't know me, I'm Josh Haynes, and this is
Oscar Mendoza.
We've been doing this for a little while, and we're going to give you a few more stories today. So with that, Oscar, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so my story is talking about Harry Billings,
Okay.
who in 1944 was 18 years old when he joined the 59th Independent Squadron of the Royal Engineers and was part of the first wave on Gold Beach, which is at Normandy.
Yeah.
Currently, he's age 96, and he's the last of Britain's D-Day heroes. He just returned from France, where he completed what he calls his last duty to honor his fallen friends who died at that beach in 1944. Since 2018, he started fundraising, which he ended up with $67,000 for the construction of a memorial where they would name the 22,442 soldiers who served under British command and died at the Battle of Normandy. Even at 96, he's not done. He's already started to fundraise to raise money so that they can care for the memorial, as well as build an education center that will be on site. The amazing thing about him is that, first of all, he survived this atrocity, and he has spent the last 68 years raising money for veterans charities through his work as a chairman for the Cornwall branch of Normandy Veterans Association. He was president of the Royal Engineers Association, and he also spent 64 years collecting for the Royal British Legion Poppy Appeal. It's a pretty amazing that even at 96, even though he said he did his last duty, he's still continuing with the fundraising efforts.
I really like that. I really appreciate, I think memorials are pretty awesome because they give us a historical understanding of who we were, who we've been. Mm-hmm. I think it provides us those, like what the story is, those inspirations for what we can be now.
Right, and it probably helps him to deal with the fact that a few of his friends that are named there, one of them even died in his arms during that storm.
Wow, that is a great story. I'm actually going to tell a story about something closer to home, something that's been happening over the last few years. It kind of came out of an idea that was started in Pittsburgh. And one of the things that we know is that millions and millions of pounds of great food goes to waste all the time, every year. One of the things that's crazy is there was this nonprofit group that was kind of, like I said, created out of Pittsburgh. It was called the 412 Food Rescue. And they had connected hundreds of local businesses, discovering that there were hundreds and hundreds of pounds of good food every single day that was just going to waste, and it was being thrown out. And they were able to create this like networking relationship where they came together and they gave this food. They found the food and then gave this food to local nonprofits to make certain that this food was not going to waste, but that it was being given out in multiple different nonprofit areas, soup kitchens, places like that where they were feeding people. There was no kitchen in the region that could really accommodate all of the food that was really coming to them because there was so much food. What a lot of people don't know is that food waste makes up 25% of all material in landfills in our nation. Wow. That is a massive amount of stuff, and it is one of the leading causes for greenhouse gas emissions. And so it's one of the things that in a lot of ways hurts our planet. And so what do we do with this great amount of food? And so coming out of this, the Good Food Project was kind of created. It was this kitchen model that was kind of brought together and built in order to be able to take care of this amount of food. And the lady that brought this together was a woman named Leah Lizarrando. And she's the one who launched this nonprofit and this app to kind of bring all of these people together to network and to be able to take care of folks. What's really crazy about what they've been able to do is now, over the last few years, since 2015 when she really kind of got involved is they've got 25,000 volunteers driving in 15 different cities. They have 800 food retailers who are all working together. They've turned more than 70 million pounds of surplus food into 57 million meals.
Wow.
It is crazy to think about what's going on, and because of their work, they have mitigated more than 30 million pounds of what would become CO2 into our air.
Wow.
It is a crazy amount of stuff that they've been able to pull off. In the area of Pittsburgh alone, they've produced over 17,000 meals that is currently taking care of 600 meals a week for people. And all at a zero cost to food, because it's just food that was on a buffet or in some restaurant that was going to go to waste and be thrown out, and now it's taking care of some of the most vulnerable of our society.
That's amazing, considering that amount of food was going to go to waste, and that's just a fraction of the whole world that has the same situation occurring.
Well, and the crazy thing about this is, and I've done some study on this even in my past that goes kind of even beyond this story, is we could literally solve every bit of the food scarcity issue in the entirety of our world based upon the amount of food we already create. Mm-hmm. So the idea is not only, and this is one of the things that we know statistically, is that the United States, with the food that we just throw away every single year, could make certain that we would end food scarcity in our country.
Wow, that's amazing.
And this lady is making it happen.
And she's starting. She's definitely has a starting point there.
Absolutely. It's crazy. Good for her, and for all of those people who are joining her in those efforts. One of the cool things that they're wanting to do is to have this particular model set up and running. They're in 15 cities now. They want to be in 100 cities by 2030.
Wow. Well, good luck to getting that going.
Let's bring it to Lubbock, Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth. I mean, that would be awesome to have that in our neighborhoods. Where we could contribute to this.
Because here in Lubbock, we're per capita the most restaurants. So imagine how much that food gets wasted there. So.
Absolutely. So what is your next story?
Yeah, so Josh, my second story is a story that I've heard many, many, many times, and it always amazes me that an average person, when pushed to that limit, can do some amazing things. Mm-hmm. And that includes Jonathan Bauer, who him and his daughter Ava were driving down Route 90 over Maryland's Assawoman Bay, and they got into a serious 5-car pileup that ultimately ended up sending 8 people to the hospital, and a pickup truck dangling over the guardrails over this bay. And after checking to make sure his daughter was okay, he headed over to that truck that was dangling. And as he's walking, he gets alerted by the driver of that vehicle that his daughter, that person's daughter, had fallen into the bay. Mm-hmm. And when he first looked at and saw her, he says that she was swimming on her back, But between that point of looking at her and looking away, when he looked back, she was struggling. Mm. So he told his daughter Ava to get the first firefighter, first responder that he could. And he took off his shoes and he jumped right in, plummeting 25 to 40 feet from that bridge. Now, amazingly, he did not sustain any injuries during that jump, and was actually able to swim to her, get her, and by that time she was incoherent, and he was able to pat her until she started coughing up water. And then by that time, some boaters that saw everything that was occurring, Joe and Alina Ortel, they brought their boat and were able to bring both of them to into safety and get that boat to where first responders were waiting. Yeah. The great news is the little girl is okay. She went in, got checked out, checked in, checked out. Now, the cool part of this story is that Jonathan tried to remain anonymous. Even after this story was released, he tried to, keep it under wraps as to exactly who he was. But the citizens of Maryland were not about to let that happen. And a few days later, we're able to reward him, and as well as the several responders that responded to this incident with a plaque, which included Joe and Alina. And through his emotion, Jonathan was able to recall the events of that day, and was at the end of the day glad he was able to save this little girl's life.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, and I love people who do not want to be recognized for doing great things, and I also love people who want to recognize those people, because I think our hearts need those stories.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I'm that type of person to try to bring stuff to light.
Yeah.
Even when I'm trying to make you laugh with my good jokes and stuff.
Yes, your jokes are amazing. Okay, so let me give you my last story.
Okay.
And kind of as we're talking about this, I had never heard this story before. I fancy myself to be an amateur historian. I love history. And yet I've never heard this story before, and yet I'd heard one of the stories similar to this about Oskar Schindler, which many of us know who Oskar Schindler is thanks to movies like Schindler's List and some of the other ways in which we've honored folks like I said, Oskar Schindler, who took care of so many Jews during World War II. So yeah, you started with World War II. We're going back to a story from World War II.
Yeah.
And there was a Dutch hero that saved so many people. And I'm trying not to butcher this man's name. I want to honor his name. His name is Jan Zwartendijk. Jan Zwartendijk. I had to look that up on Google and ask them to pronounce it for me so I would know how to say it.
Good job.
Jan Zwartendijk. Okay, so Jan Zwartendijk, during the time, was known as Mr. Radio Phillips, a.k.a. now the Angel of Curacao. And I'm going to explain what that means. But part of the reason we know him as Mr. Radio Phillips is because at the time he was working for that company. He was working for the home brand goods company, Philips, where he sold gramophones and he sold light bulbs and other things in the area of Kaunas, Lithuania, during that time. And what's really crazy about this is soon after, when the Germans had taken over so much of Europe, refugees from Poland were just flooding into the area where he was, and they were seeking help, and they were trying to find help from anybody, much like what we're seeing with the Ukrainian refugees right now, who are just flooding into other places asking for any and every bit of help they can get. And Zwartendijk was willing to help. His son said that they had this conversation when he was younger, and his son straight up said to him, "Son, this is what everyone would have done if they were in this position. This is what we do. We help people." Yeah. And so what he ends up doing with where he's working, okay, he had moved into a role as a city official, and he was literally issuing passports to people in order to get them out of where they were and into the Dutch Caribbean kind of run island of Curacao, which is where he gets his name, the Angel of Curacao. He issued more than 2,000 passports for Jewish families to get out and to get away. Now, once they get to the island of Curacao, it's up to the island there to either determine are they going to receive these refugees or what, but at least he got them out of harm's way. It is said, and most people believe numerically, that in these 2,000 plus passports that he gave to families, Jan Zwartendijk, who was a consul, that was his kind of job at the time, saved probably more people than Oskar Schindler. In fact, the story goes on to say they talked to Steven Spielberg, who gave us Schindler's List, and his comment was, had I known the story of Jan Zwartendijk, I would probably have filmed that story instead of Oskar Schindler's. Wow. It's that big of a deal. What's crazy about it is that the highest medal or recognition that you can receive as a non-Jew by the nation of Israel is the Righteous Among the Nations Award. Jan Zwartendijk was actually given this award in 1997 when his story came to light.
Wow.
it is a beautiful act of love and self-sacrifice in the midst of what was such trauma and tragedy.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing that says that Steven Spielberg can't come back.
I know.
And do a sequel, or not a sequel, but a story about him. I mean, that's very interesting.
Yeah, I'd love to see something like that, man. This is what we do, right? Like we try to tell good stories because we want good stories to encourage your story. And so as we close this up, we're rooting for you guys. We want you to enjoy working with the Madera companies. And then we also want to encourage you for your life and for your relationships and to get out and do something good for others.
Yeah.
I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I mean, just remember, I've said it many times, that it doesn't matter how small the gesture is. You never know how much of an impact that's going to make on a person that's possibly having a bad day, bad week, bad month, and so just go out there and do good things.
All right. Thanks, guys, for joining us.
Thank you.